I would like you all to start in standing, please. Mostly just to take an impression of this is how I am right now in this moment. And just feel your weight through the floor. You probably want to step off your mat so you can really feel how you let the floor support you in standing. And notice if you were going to stand here for a while, what would start to either fatigue or get uncomfortable? Or is standing a relatively pleasant and easy function for you? And you can also notice how your breathing is in standing. And we just sort of take this scan at the beginning of a lesson to give you something to refer back to at the end of the lesson. And then go ahead, actually before we lie down, just turn your head gently to the left and to the right and feel for how far your head turns as well as just the quality of turning. So in these lessons we're really not doing a range of motion or a stretch, but we're feeling for the quality of movement. And then you can go ahead and lie on your backs, please. All right, and lying on your backs, begin to feel your connection with the floor, how your weight is supported. And use the differences, the right and left side differences, to call your attention. So much of the time in our medical communities, our sport and fitness communities, we have this really strong idea of symmetry. Both shoulders should be the same, both hips should be the same. And the truth is that we're not asymmetrical. We have a stability side and a mobility side. You know you have a dominant hand, well, you have a dominant leg. We all know our heart's on the left. Some of you might know your liver's on the right, your stomach's on the left. So we're anything but symmetrical, and yet we impose this artificial expectation on ourselves and then create a certain amount of suffering or mental discomfort when we find out we're not symmetrical. But as you lie here, just notice the pressure behind your right shoulder blade and your left shoulder blade and shoulder. See if you can feel any differences. You might trace the outline of the shoulder blade on the right and the left. Feel if the pressures are the same or different. Feel the weight behind your hips and pelvis. Again, really feel the weight behind the right side and the left side. Feel the weight of each of your legs, your right leg and your left leg. You might notice one feels a little heavier or lighter. Maybe just one has more contact with the floor, more of your skin is touching the floor. Maybe one of your knees bends a little bit more than the other. Or there's a little more pressure through one of your heels. Maybe one leg even feels a little longer or shorter than the other leg. And notice this for your arms as well. The weight of each arm, pressure under your upper arms, your right and left elbows, your forearms and hands. Feel the weight behind your head. And without changing it, notice, is your head lying, does it feel like it's right in the center of the back of your head? Or is your head just naturally turned a little bit to the left or to the right? And then you might notice, if you are aware of that your head is turned a little left or right, behind that awareness, is there a comment? Does your mind have something to say about the rightness or the wrongness of your head turning one way more than the other? Our mind has a lot to say about how we are. And often it's busy judging or criticizing or just making commentaries that aren't always useful. And very gently turn your head to the left and to the right. Again, not stretching, not feeling for the range of motion, although you can notice how far you go easily, left and right, without pushing, but also feeling the quality. Great. And just leave it in the center. And then please bend your knees up one at a time. And throughout these lessons, for many people, it actually creates some discomfort and some strain on the low back to have your legs out long. So even when I make the suggestion to let your legs be long, if that's not comfortable for you, one of the cardinal rules is never do anything that hurts or is uncomfortable. So always give yourself permission to bend your knees or find a position that is more comfortable. Because as we go through these movements, we want to decrease the static of discomfort. So anything in your body that is wanting attention because it hurts, we want to see if we can make that a little more comfortable so you can deepen your awareness of the other things that will be going on. Okay, so raise your right arm towards the ceiling so that your fingers are relatively pointed towards the ceiling and your elbow is straight but not locked. Don't put a lot of effort into making it straight, but your whole arm is lengthened as though you're reaching up towards the ceiling. And gently reach your arm a little further towards the ceiling. So you're lengthening your arm up towards the ceiling. Your right shoulder and shoulder blade might come away from the floor a little bit, and just lower it back down to the floor. And do this several times, but keeping the arm in the elevated position. So the arm stays up, pointed towards the ceiling, and you're lifting, reaching, and then just lowering the shoulder and shoulder blade back down while keeping the arm upward. And just feel what happens. Feel what happens in your chest, in your shoulder blade itself. And as you do that, ask yourself, how do you do this? And if you were going to reach further, what is it that stops the arm? When you get to that point where you've reached to what feels like your normal and comfortable limit to the ceiling, if you were going to try to reach further, what would you have to push through, or where would you have to effort? And don't necessarily do it, but just be curious about that. I wonder why my arm stops there. Notice how you're breathing as you reach and release. Notice if your face is soft, your jaw and your tongue. And then let your arm rest by your side. And just feel for a moment if just that little bit of movement and attention to the right arm has changed how you sense your right arm as compared to your left. As they rest here on the floor. And then please bring the left arm up towards the ceiling, fingers pointed towards the ceiling, elbow relatively straight but not locked. And begin reaching your left arm up and then lowering the shoulder and shoulder blade back to the floor while keeping the arm relatively straight. And just feel how you do that. How do you lift the shoulder? What muscles engage first to bring the shoulder away from the floor? And when you've brought your shoulder away from the floor to the furthest point that seems reasonably easy and effortless, just ask yourself, what would I have to push through? Where would I have to work to reach my arm even further? Notice what you feel in your ribs. Do you feel any connection into your neck, down your trunk or spine? And just let your left arm rest at your side. And feel now how your left arm rests and how your right arm rests. How you're breathing. And gently roll your head a little bit left and right, just feeling for the quality. Has anything begun to change? Good, and then just pause in the middle with your head. And now roll your head gently to the right while lifting your left shoulder away from the floor. So keep your arm down to your side. So just lifting the left shoulder up towards the ceiling and rolling your head to the right and coming back to the middle and doing this just several times to the right. So the arm stays resting on the floor lightly and just the shoulder lifts as your head rolls to the right. Again, feeling that connection between the left shoulder and the turning of the right head. Does it feel like two distinctly separate movements, or is there something related? Somehow are those two movements related? Notice if you try to do anything with your left arm. Do you push through your left arm, or does it just stay resting lightly? Good. And then try this a few times, rolling your head to the left and lifting your right shoulder. And just resting back in neutral and going leftward with your head several times, just feeling what else is happening. As you turn your head to the left, feel what happens in the front of you, the front ribs and the sternum, breastbone, the collarbones. Feel how the weight shifts in your back as your right shoulder lifts up. Do you feel more pressure behind your left shoulder? Good. And then a couple times just go left and right. Rolling your head to the right, lifting your left shoulder. Rolling your head left, lifting your right shoulder. And ask yourself, which comes first? Do you roll your head and then your shoulder comes along lifting? Or do you lift your shoulder and then you roll your head? And you might even try it both ways. Letting your head initiate it, and seeing if somehow your head roll invites the shoulder lift. And then trying it the other way, lifting the shoulder and seeing if that invites the rolling of the head. And then just pause in the middle. You might just rock your knees from side to side a couple times just to shift the pressure behind the back of your pelvis. back to the middle. Some of you may remember what we did last week, and others of you here today or out there listening to this CD have no idea what I'm talking about. But last week's lesson I call push through foot. So bring your attention to your right foot and just begin pressing through your foot and letting the pressure through your right foot lift the right side of your pelvis. And then lower that. So try that several times, just feeling that connection. Press through the right foot and just lightly let the right side of your pelvis lift a little bit. And you'll feel that by lifting the right side of your pelvis and at least the lower half of your trunk rolls a little bit leftward. Great. And then next time you press through your right foot, let your head roll left and your right shoulder lift also. So we're going to combine rolling the head left, lifting the right shoulder and pressing through the right foot, and coming back to neutral. So again, are these 2 or 3 or 4 separate movements? The pushing through the foot, the lifting of the pelvis, the lifting of the shoulder, and the rolling of the head? Or can you begin to feel the interrelationship between all of those? How each one makes the other a little lighter and a little more effortless. And just have that intention of decreasing the effort, increasing the flow. Good, and then just let that go and pause for a moment. And bring your attention to the left foot and just start with pressing through the left foot, seeing if you can feel that connection between pressing through the left foot and lifting the left side of your pelvis a little bit. And when you're ready, when you're really feeling that connection, left foot, left pelvis, let your left shoulder lift and your head roll to the right. And just play with which comes first. So the instruction has been thus far to start the movement by pressing through the left foot and letting it travel basically from the lowest part of yourself up through your pelvis and spine to your head. But what if you were to start with your head rolling to the right, letting your shoulder follow? Could you feel the invitation all the way down to your foot and pelvis? And a couple times go side to side, rolling the head, left shoulder, and right hip, right foot, taking the head, right, pressing through the left foot, lifting the left shoulder and left hip. And play around a little bit. Try leading with one body part, maybe your shoulder. Try leading with your hip, your foot or your head. Make the movements light and easy, nice and gentle. And when you've made it as light and as easy and as effortless as is pleasurable to you, then just take a full break. Nice rest on your back. Just see if things are beginning to change and how you feel your contact, the back of each shoulder blade, the right and left sides of your pelvis, your heels. And then bend your knees up again, please. Or keep them up. It's all good. And lying here, press the back of your right shoulder into the floor. So just several times press and release the back of your right shoulder. And find out how you do it. How do you engage certain muscles to increase the pressure, the back of your right shoulder into the floor? And then try increasing the pressure behind the back of your left hip. How do you press the back of your left hip? And just alternate, pressing the right shoulder and the left hip. Breathing, notice how you're breathing. It's amazing in these lessons how often we can catch ourselves concentrating and holding our breaths or tightening our jaws. And you can imagine if you do it here, under a pretty non-threatening environment with pretty gentle, easy movements, how often you're doing it out there in the world, in your life. And then switch sides. Try pressing the back of the left shoulder a few times, and the back of the right hip a few times. And really each time, as if each time it's brand new, asking yourself, how am I going to do it this time? Is it really exactly the same each time? We take so much of our movements for granted. And getting interested and curious can really create so much change in how our nervous system decides to organize us. It's never really been asked before. Your brain has never been asked if there's another way. Could I organize this body differently? So we're sort of sleepwalking our bodies through life. And if you haven't started yet, try alternating from the left shoulder to the right hip. And then again, pause. Just feel your back being supported by the floor. There's this wonderful thing called gravity that is gently asking and inviting you to just be here now. And as hard as you try to fight it, you're really not going anywhere except forward and backward and side to side and turning. But we use all these muscles to sort of lift us up and hold us up. And there's this very natural force that's happening, gravity through us and our bones, supporting us so our muscles can relax. And if you let your legs down long, please bend them up again. And go back to the movement of alternating the pressure behind your right shoulder and left hip. And really get clear the distance between the right shoulder and left hip. And then see if you can find the spot in the middle and press that spot down. Where's the midpoint between the the right shoulder and the left hip? And then see if you can go between all three. So the left shoulder, press, release. The midpoint, press, release. The right hip, the left hip, press, release. Good thing I have notes. Left shoulder, right shoulder, midpoint, left hip. Breathing, nice and gentle. And then can you just sort of draw a smooth line of pressure? Right shoulder, just continuing to press down towards the midpoint and continuing to shift the pressure down towards the left hip, and then shifting up diagonally through the back of your trunk, up and down. If you were lying on sand, you'd be sort of trying to make a little diagonal indentation. While breathing, and then pause. You can let your legs down if that's comfortable for you. And just listening for how you feel now, but often these rest breaks are an opportunity for you to check in and see, am I doing too much? So many of the people that I work with experience chronic pain. And they're so used to not listening to their bodies, because when they listen, they hear pain. And so then when they do these lessons, if they're not listening, even as gentle as they might seem, it's very stimulating to the nervous system to bring this much focus to one's body. And so they can sometimes have some increased pain afterwards. Not because the lesson itself is so hard, but because they don't know how to listen to just take care of themselves, even in the moments of what seems to be small, gentle movements. Again, please bend your knees up. And a few times alternate between pressing the back of your left shoulder and the back of your right hip. Left shoulder, right hip. And get really clear on the distance until you can find that midpoint. And it's interesting, is the midpoint between the left shoulder and right hip different or the same as the midpoint between the right shoulder and left hip? And then alternating between all three, going left shoulder, midpoint, right hip, back through the midpoint, up to the left shoulder, until eventually see if you can draw a smooth line of diagonal pressure between the left shoulder and the right hip. Notice if you're tensing any other place unnecessarily, in your shoulders, your abdomen, your face. And then you might do a few going from left shoulder to right hip. And you could even cross over then and go right shoulder to left hip. You could do like a triangle figure 8. Just pressing through that big X in your back. So often in movements we're really focused on something that's moving away from the floor. So these parts of these lessons where we're really pressing into the floor goes back to that theme we were talking about really finding a way to feel the support of the floor. Great. And then let that go. Let your legs down long if that's comfortable for you. And take a rest. Feel your breathing. Feel the weight and length of your right and left arms. Your right and left legs. And then bend your knees up again, one at a time, please. And let each hand hold onto the opposite elbow. And bring your arms over the front of your chest. So you're making sort of a triangle above your chest. Good. And in this position, lift your right elbow towards the ceiling. Notice what happens in the opposite shoulder blade, what happens through your feet. And see if you can feel, is there a timing of lifting that right arm and right shoulder blade where you feel that you want to press through your right foot? Is there a natural place where that right foot pressure could help this movement be even lighter, more and more effortless? And have your feet so they're a little bit apart, if they're not already. And then do this a few times with the left elbow and left shoulder blade. First just lifting and lowering them, and then beginning to listen. As you lift that left shoulder blade, that left elbow towards the ceiling, is there a point where it just seems natural to press a little through your left foot and support that movement in some way, keeping it light and easy. And then alternate, lifting the right elbow, shoulder blade, feeling it. Seeing if there's a point where you want to help press through your right foot. And resting down into neutral, and then lifting the left elbow and shoulder blade, feeling the connection down, and possibly pressing through your left foot. Really feeling the connection of that. Breathing. Let your head and neck be soft. What does your head and neck want to do? If it were to follow along with this movement, does it want to roll a little bit side to side? And try it a few times, letting your head roll. And then try it a few times, really holding your head towards the ceiling. Which way requires more effort? And it might be different for some of you. Some of you might really have to think an effort to roll your head, and others might have to really effort to hold your head still. Remember, there is no wrong way. And let your arms down. Rest. So we take these pauses during the lessons, not so much because your body is getting fatigued, but remember we're doing these lessons as much for your brain's flexibility, for your brain's ability to attend to you, to use your body to be present in the moment, to bring curiosity and exploration into your everyday life, so you're not moving and living in the same habitual patterns day after day, hour after hour, moment after moment. So this is a lot of focus and concentration for your brain on you and your movement. It's good to give it a break. So roll onto your left side, please. And if you have a towel folded up, put that under your head so you're comfortable. If you're wearing glasses, you might want to take them off just so they're not squishing into your head. And lie so that your hips and knees are bent at about 90 degrees each, and that should give you some good support for lying. And then hold your arms in the rectangle position that we had earlier. So your right hand is holding onto your left elbow, and your left hand is holding onto your right elbow. And your arms are coming out perpendicular from your body, so about 90 degrees. So they're in front of you. If you were to roll on your back, they'd be organized towards the ceiling like they were previously. And begin to move your right shoulder just forward and back. Let your left hand follow. And just feel that movement gently with your right shoulder. And again, notice, does your head want to stay still? Or if you really soften your neck, is there a tendency for your head to roll a little bit? Possibly it would roll down towards the floor as you take your elbow forward, and back to neutral, or up a little towards the ceiling as you take your elbow and shoulder backwards. Good, and then just keep that configuration with your arms and pause in neutral. And then bring your attention down to your right hip, the right side of your pelvis, and see if you can rock that a little forward and backwards. What has to organize to do this? Ask yourself, how do I do this? And then see if you can roll your pelvis and your shoulder and arm forward and back together, so that essentially your whole body is starting to roll a little forward and back, but staying on your side. Just a little bit forward, a little bit back. See if your head wants to follow. And then what if you were to try to take them in opposite directions? So letting your pelvis go forward and your shoulder back, pelvis back, shoulder and elbow forward. And breathing, letting your jaw and face stay soft. Sometimes that's the trickiest part. Great. And then just roll on your backs again, please. Feel the right and left sides. Feel your breathing. And roll onto your right sides, please. Same configuration. Hips and knees at about 90 degrees. Hands holding on to opposite elbows. And just kind of begin to explore your way through this in your own way. You might even choose to start with the hips going forward and backwards. But just feel your own connections, rolling maybe the shoulder or the hips or the head together or opposite. Be playful. What's it like for those kids, those babies especially, just rolling and playing? They have no idea, no agenda, just being in their bodies, exploring. I doubt that they even know that pretty soon they're going to roll over. We all know, and we're coaxing them along and coaching them along, and we can't wait to write it down in our baby books and call our mothers and grandmothers. But the baby's just moving, just totally in the moment, wiggling, enjoying its life. And do your best to not move to the fast rhythm of the Nia people next door. Unless you want to multitask your Feldenkrais and your exercise. Not move to the rhythm of the Nia next door. Yeah. Yeah. All right, and roll yourselves onto your backs again, please. Just settling into the floor, enjoying your life. And again, please bend your knees up one at a time. Raise both arms up towards the ceiling, elbows relatively straight. And just begin to reach with the right arm. Feel it move through your body. Is there an invitation for the right foot to press and support the movement? Reach and let go. Has anything changed? What wants to happen in your neck, in your head, in the front of your chest, through your trunk and pelvis? And try the left arm a few times. And make it lighter and easier, softer. But see if you can go a little farther. Can you go farther and farther without making it more and more effortful? And breathing. Very nice. Let your arms down, let your legs down. And just gently roll your head left and right. See if the quality of that or the distance of that has changed at all throughout this lesson. Feel how you let the floor support you. Back of your shoulder blades, your pelvis, each of your legs and arms. Just pause in the middle. And in your own time, I want you to really take your time to roll to your sides, and come up to sitting. Bring yourself up to standing when you're ready. And once in standing, just take some time to turn your head left and right. Feel the quality of standing now compared to the beginning, and really noticing what's changed. What are some words you might use to describe this? If you were to name this lesson based on your sensations, what name might you give it? And then spend some time walking around before you get into your activities of the day. And have a wonderful week.